Hello and welcome to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. Rachael is a speaker, inspirational author, and an overcomer. As Rachael is walking through her own journey of grief, she's challenging others to persevere and overcome their own circumstances. Find out more at rachelflick.com. Here now is your host, Rachael Flick.
Hi, friends. Welcome to this week's episode of the Hopecast. I'm so glad you're joining me. I just want to thank you for being a listener of the show and for continuing to support me in the message of resilience and growth after hardship. I love telling the stories of overcomers who have experienced loss and hardship and are showing us the way through with strength and community and wisdom. And I hope that their stories are touching you. If they are, would you rate, review, and subscribe to the Hopecast? That helps us get the message out to more people. And if you want to be a part of helping produce the Hopecast, you can go on buymeacupofcoffee.com/Rachael Flick, and any gift as low as $5 even would be helpful in continuing to create this message for other people who also need it. So today I want to welcome my guest, Chris Burns. Chris and I have served on a commission for our city council called the Law Enforcement Transparency and Advisory Commission. I will just give a little caveat. We are not speaking for LETAC. We are speaking for ourselves and our own stories today. It's the fine print and just making sure everybody knows this is our own personal thoughts and conversations. But Chris, welcome to the Hopecast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm so glad you're here. You are a great guest for the Hopecast because of your experience in the military and in law enforcement. And I want to start sharing more stories like yours. And so would you just kind of introduce yourself, tell us about your military and law enforcement, your family, kind of give us a little introduction of you.
Okay. I entered the Army in 1989 through the National Guard. Shortly after that, I enlisted in the National Guard. I was an artillery guy. And after that, transitioned into the ROTC program at the University of Colorado. And through that program, I earned a commission in the regular Army and went in the regular Army as an aviation officer, a helicopter pilot. And then
I didn't know that you were a helicopter pilot.
Yeah. Oh, I'm surprised I had never mentioned that before. Usually a pilot's going to tell you as soon as you meet them. So I did a tour of duty in Germany in the early 90s. This was post, I guess, what you would call Desert One, kind of the hard-charging young officer that ran right into the drawdown Army.
And how old were you at that time?
22, 23-ish.
Okay.
And I kind of refer to the Army as my active duty train wreck. It did not agree with me. Was not a happy camper, wanting to go do the real mission, and found myself in the drawdown Army with very little flying and managing mail rooms and chow halls and things like that. So it wasn't what I expected. Long story short, the Army realized they had too many pilots, and they sent out programs that people could get out early. And that's what I did. I took a voluntary separation, returned to Colorado, and entered the National Guard. They have an aviation unit, so I flew helicopters with the National Guard. That was about 1998. And at the same time, I applied for and was accepted to the Colorado Springs Police Department. So I was a full-time police officer and then a part-time National Guard officer flying helicopters, which was a good combination, and really enjoyed that. And again, new police officer, new experiences, really just grooved on that job and just loved every minute of it. And so I worked that continuously through my retirement from the National Guard in 2019 and my retirement from the police department in 22. During that time, I had a deployment to Iraq. So as a National Guard officer, you would be called back to active duty. So I go on military leave from the police department and then go serve full-time. Did a deployment over to Iraq where I was flying Black Hawk helicopters. And that was its own challenge. Thankfully, returned with no new holes and mostly mind and body intact. But it was a significant life impact because at that time I was newly married. I had two little kids. I married in 2002 and deployed in 2005. And with that, it was an 18-month deployment, which is just an unimaginable time away from a
It's
young
a long
family.
time. Yeah. And everybody's changing and growing so quickly.
Yeah, I left with a 1.5-year-old and a 6-month-old,
Wow.
and I returned home to a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Mm.
So a huge chunk was missed. And there were incidents over in Iraq that were probably harder on my family than me. We had combat losses while I was there. Of course, when you're there, you know everything going on, but the families are back home hanging on every word from CNN and just thinking the worst.
Mm.
So huge challenges around that. So lots of issues around that deployment, coming home, reintegrating, and you really go from such a different world in a deployed situation than you do in everyday day-to-day life. And with that, returning home, there's that reintegration time that is really challenging.
Mm.
And interestingly, we had a chaplain that gave us some counseling and some briefings, and they said, when you first get home, you will be in the honeymoon phase. Things will be a little uncomfortable to reset, and it will be challenging. But he literally said, in 10 to 14 months after your deployment, the wheels will come off your train. Things will crash, which I wasn't expecting at all, but held true. Marital issues, kid issues, just readjusting to life issues.
Mm.
It not immediately, but it took a couple months, and then from there, trying to put those pieces back together. Thankfully, stayed married. Kids were doing well, but again, you can imagine going from Iraq, the stresses of that, to return to the police department, where I go right back into stresses as a police officer.
Mm.
So that took a little bit of adjustment to get through also. But again, got back into the groove of things and continued my career as a police officer. During my time as a police officer, multiple critical incidences. They were not the exception. A lot of times, it was not infrequent that you're going to homicide scenes, suicide scenes, serious accidents, and again, you're compartmentalizing everything that you encounter on the job. And just like every police officer, you have to find a way to process that and to live with that effectively,
Mm.
which is a big challenge sometimes. Up through my retirement from the military and then into my retirement from the police department. I retired after 30 years with the military between 1989 and 2019.
Okay.
And then 24 years as a police officer from 98 to 22. Is that right? Yeah. So again, I think I was in as a police officer through the anti-police movement, through the Ferguson, through the George Floyd, and really, even though our department had no connection with any of those incidents, there was absolutely a part of the community that was virulently anti-police, and that was not an unusual encounter to have. So those were challenging times.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Can
yeah.
you talk a little bit about that anti-police sentiment and how that affected you personally, the department, just kind of the morale and what that felt like?
Yeah, so the morale crashed throughout the department. One of the dynamics at the time, I was working in one of our schools as a resource officer, and it was one of our considered to be more integrated schools, a little lower income, significant minority population, where I had great relationships with the young people there, the kids there. It was great. And then something in the national news would kick off, and all of a sudden, what was just great feelings and relationships, I was now the enemy, literally overnight. And there were times that I would come into school and noticeably feel a different vibe from the student population. I says, okay, what happened in the national news that everybody's mad at me for now?
You're like, I got to keep up so I know how my job's going to be the next day.
Yeah, exactly. And probably one of the things that insulated me from some of that was being in the schools, that I could form longer term personal relationships with kids that could see me as a human, as opposed to what the news was showing them. The challenges was when I would do patrol work, invariably you just come across somebody almost maybe not even in a enforcement situation, but they were immediately hostile, if not violently so, which was unexpected and really challenging. And I really saw firsthand how the public, I felt, was completely manipulated by the media and narratives that were just being pushed for sensationalism. So again, from the police standpoint, we could look at situations and go, yeah, that's a bad situation. I understand kind of the ABC, how it came about, would have done things differently. But again, what was lost in a lot of that was just the nuance of those situations that are so difficult for humans to deal with anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting how one of the most dangerous places now for law enforcement is a traffic stop,
Oh, yeah.
because you never know who you're going to get, what they're
Yeah.
going through, what they think of you, that they're preparing for you to be some dangerous person in their life.
Yep.
And I know that really picked up during that Ferguson.
Yeah.
There were officers who were assassinated in their
Right.
cars doing paperwork.
Yep. And again, people, and we probably find this with social media, with any kind of a radicalization of an individual, they have an opportunity to get online, to go into social media, find those few voices that mirror what they want to hear, and they just dive down this rabbit hole that will absolutely send them off a fringe belief system, and cause people that may have mental health issues anyway to completely become unhinged. So that's a real challenge. And again, I was one of our crisis negotiators. So I would often train other officers in how to interact with people, how to de-escalate situations. But you do run into those individuals that there's no amount of talking that's going to change the mindset that they have. And it's very difficult knowing that this person may have had a legitimate negative experience, but they have used that to color their whole world. So, yeah.
So as a crisis negotiator, so de-escalation is such a big buzzword right now
Yep.
in the concept of police reform and law enforcement. And
Yeah.
would you say that we'll call that a soft skill, right?
I
Working
think
with
so.
people.
Yep.
How would you say the majority of officers are on soft skills? Like, what are they bringing to the table
Right.
when they're like, I'm interested in law enforcement?
Right. I think the biggest thing that I've seen is experience. When I came on, there were patrol officers that had 30 years on the job. And I'd go out to some call as a rookie, and they would be basically the old guy in the crowd going, yeah, we're not going to do that, and you're going to handle it differently, that kind of thing.
Interesting. Okay.
To where there really was a moderating effect and a mentorship effect. Now, what has happened is that through all of the drama in police departments, we have lost our senior officers
Right.
effectively, and certainly lost them in the patrol bureau. Now you find senior officers on patrol shifts with 2 years on. That's just unimaginable. And the so what to that is that the number of tools in their toolbox to talk to people is limited. So picture that young college kid that just got the job, and the only thing they have to fall back on in life experience or whatever is that they've been told you have the authority. So they're, as we would say, badge heavy. They're ordering people. They're, that's the videos you see of telling them repeatedly over that you can see that there's no communication taking place. They're just repeating the same thing.
Yeah.
Whereas as someone that I will tell you that the way I did the job as a 20-year officer is night and day compared to how I was as a 2-year officer. And that's going to be true for any officer, and particularly for young officers that come on the police department. If a person comes on after some time in another career, they have life experience, that's a little different. But again, the thing that really makes a difference is just that life experience and that ability to interact with a person and reach them on a level that they respond to, whatever that looks like. Again, one of the things that I used to train people with, I was a police training officer, was to have an acknowledgement that when you say something that they don't respond to, put your hands up. Well, if they're not putting their hands up, what you're saying is not working. So you have to do something else because you haven't connected with them and you haven't communicated. And what I've seen in kind of the tragic videos to the frustrating videos that float around the internet is the officer repeating the same thing over and over and over again and not getting a response. So there are multiple different techniques and verbal approaches that don't look like what you would consider to be the standard police officer response. A lot of times it is taking opportunity, slowing things down, listening to that person. What's your issue? And letting that sit where it is, if the situation allows for that. And with that, a lot of people I have found, if you just stop and let them talk and realize that they've been heard, that in many ways goes a long way to resolving what otherwise can be just a one-way exchange that leads to a use of force. So, thankfully, I mean, my use of force as compared to other officers, particularly as a senior officer, was much less than other officers. And,
Interesting.
and what I did see was younger officers quickly run out of things to say, and as a result, they go hands-on. Sometimes what I observe is that's a little soon. Now I can't see what they're seeing necessarily,
Right.
but again, these officers come out of a training academy where every scenario they run into, somebody's going to shoot at them or fight them in the academies.
Yeah. Yeah.
I say in quotation, probably not. I mean, different academies have different approaches, but they come out very, very kind of tentative and high strung sometimes. But again, it's also personalities. Also, I have definitely seen younger officers that have come through what I consider to be the video generation. They didn't spend a lot of playground time. They didn't have the elementary school rough and tumble experiences. So sometimes they're very, very tentative about their physical capabilities, and that creates a higher level of risk because a scared officer is a dangerous officer. And one of the big things that I've been a very strong proponent of, and I should back up, I have a long background. I was a competitive wrestler, a competitive judo athlete. It's what brought me to Colorado Springs. But one of the things that I observed was that any officer that's not regularly training in some kind of grappling, hands-on, martial arts, boxing, something like that, is relying on what I would consider to be just uniform confidence. They're wearing a uniform, they think it makes them tougher or whatever, and that's not true. If you're going to go into the police profession, you really do need to take time and energy in your own time to become proficient. Just like you hear police officers saying, I go to the range, et cetera, all the time. Okay, that's great. But how many of you show up at your local martial art gym or local wrestling club to just do that hands-on training? And not that it makes you better or more capable, which of course it does, but it does give you a level of confidence where someone begins to act up and you go, okay, this one doesn't concern me. We'll work through this without, jumping to the next level kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and that is a recommendation that I put through to our law enforcement advisory.
Yeah. And they are doing some things to shift from the original FBI model of, armbar and punching and those kind of things to grappling and being more proficient with using momentum and things like that to help when someone is resisting an order. Can you give people who might not be as familiar with what it is to be in a code black crisis situation on a regular basis, what does that feel like? Because I think, when you see, put your hands up, put your hands up, put your hands up, like their brain has stopped. Like we're no longer with any prefrontal cortex. We're not problem solving. We're not, doing anything that might be helpful. And what I'm hearing you say is you've had a lot of experience in training where you're confident and you can sit back and not necessarily see an immediate threat, right? Like even if there is a threat, you're not going to 100 immediately. But a lot of people don't even understand that process.
Right. So I'll first say that every situation is different, and there can be situations where you need to take an immediate physical action because of what you're presented with. But other times the message that officers are giving is whatever you're confronted with, you have to immediately stop and overcome that person, whatever that looks like. If a scene has stabilized, they're not actively aggressing against you. There's no immediate indication. Okay, you're back to negotiator. You're back to talking. All right. Now everything is situational dependent. But what I have seen is officers that are not confident about what's happening, that are nervous, will have a tendency to move forward and escalate things, possibly unnecessarily. Now I say that really generally because, again, situations are so fluid and things unravel so fast sometimes. The biggest thing is that I have seen videos and, they float around the internet, that kind of thing, where sometimes senior officers look at it and they go, I'm not sure I would have taken that approach.
Mm-hmm.
But again, at the same time, we don't want to necessarily double guess those officers because they're making the best decisions they can with the tools they have available at that time. And then we really do pray for a positive outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Could you tell of a time where you can think of how this applies to a situation specifically where you have had someone who isn't complying, maybe is combative, and how you worked through that?
Yeah, so on a number of occasions, particularly in the schools, you can picture that upset teenager, young male. He's angry, he's frustrated. The moment you get him kind of isolated or separated, he's still very agitated, very, very acting out. And you can picture your picture of an expressive, arms moving teenager kind of thing, keeping your space and distance, where a lot of times taking the real authoritative, you stop, you do what I'm telling you, et cetera, that is a direct, a lot of times, trigger for someone that's grown up in a say, a trauma-filled environment, where if you just say, stop, I hear what you're saying, I know you're upset, just talk this, what's going on before you jump on. I'm not going to jump on you. You're not going to jump on me. We'll just sit here and talk. And so I've had quite a few situations where it would have been completely justified to go hands-on with someone. Whereas in particular, I will stop and I will say, okay, I'm being safe. I'm keeping a distance. I'm watching to make sure there's no weapons. But then I begin to process with that person. And if that person is not, say, for example, intoxicated or affected by drugs, alcohol, or substantial mental illness, many times just the time it takes to interact with that person, that time itself lets that person's adrenaline go down, lets that person kind of vent through whatever they were dealing with. And more often than not, you can get a person to de-escalate for themselves. So I found that to be a pretty helpful tool and was something that I used a lot. But again, I'll reiterate and say that there are situations that are unfolding. Say a police officer goes into a violent situation and you're going to have to take steps almost immediately to stop it. I was involved in an officer-involved shooting, which was very much like that. From my time to arrival, confronting a person with a gun to actually having to take action was seconds. And it just wasn't going to be an opportunity. So again, situations are so fluid that they really do. But again, going back to that, experience counts. Even if you're young and you're a new officer, if you have the opportunity to go through multiple scenarios, to rehearse things, to say what if, but the more you interact with a person, the more you interact with different people, different cultures, the better you will be in the long run. And keep in mind, you always have the badge authority. You have to do what I say because I'm a cop kind of thing, but that shouldn't be your first go-to. Many times, your first go-to should be a conversation if it is at all possible. And again, what I found many times is if a person felt that they were listened to, even if you didn't agree with what they were saying, they felt a level of respect that many times they didn't feel otherwise.
I think, I've heard fast is slow and slow is fast, right? When we're in a hurry. And I know sometimes I can relate to this just with simple parenting where just want to get something done, right?
Yep.
I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss it. I don't want to explain it to you. I just want a result. And, especially the older my kids get as teens, they're like, well, why are you thinking like that? And, I don't agree with your outcome or your the thing that you want me to do. And it's everything in me to just go, it's okay if I don't get this outcome really quickly. And I just take this moment. And it's a little statistic that I read somewhere that I thought was huge. And I'm not going to quote it correctly. So I'll be, among those people who falsify statistics, but it's pretty close. Yep. And they said the risk of a physician being sued by a patient was markedly decreased if they spent an average of 7 seconds longer with a patient.
Making that connection.
Make the connection, sit there. And I've seen doctors who don't do it. I've had a lot of experience with doctors in the last couple of years, and I've seen doctors who do it. And oftentimes it's like they just pause and say, do you have any more questions for me? Or what else would you like to know? And maybe I don't have any more questions. Maybe there isn't anything I don't want to know, but I felt like you said, that they
Yep.
listened, that they heard me. And even if, as a parent or a police officer, you still have to have a certain outcome, the fact that you have involved them in the conversation, that they feel human, that they're
Yep.
not just being told what to do. And that's a really good point that I've never thought about, how you as an authority figure are triggering so many experiences that they've had with authority, good and
Yep.
bad, in the
Yep.
past.
Yeah. And I can also say, raising 3 kids, that I don't have a memory of any time being angry at my kids and responding in that space that worked well.
Right.
That I look back on, I go, oh, that was a stellar parenting moment.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that interacting with, and again, I kind of categorize in that I worked a lot in the juvenile areas, but the young males, if you respond with anger, that's an immediate confrontation that they will respond equally. And I've seen a lot of officers also, they try to over escalate. I'm going to be louder. I'm going to be more directive, that kind of thing. The approach I took a lot of times would be the calmest one in the room.
Mm-hmm.
They're loud. That's fine. I noticed as I lower my volume, they start to lower their volume, even though they're still loud. So little tricks like that would give me an insight that person actually, although they're angry and their outbursts, they're still processing what's in front of them and they're responding to it. Maybe not in the way I want immediately, but that gives me the best opportunity to de-escalate them. So very rarely did I find I'm the officer and I'm going to yell orders at you, got the result that I needed. So
yeah, I often wonder, in some of those traffic stops that you see, and there's different legality around whether an officer has to say why they pulled someone over on a stop,
Yep.
But immediately people, they want to have a conversation about it. Well, why, what did I do? Why am I here? And did you do this? And a lot of times the officer's like, license and registration, like, I don't want to talk to you,
So my standard approach on any traffic stop was, howdy, I'm Officer Burns, this police department. Hey, I stopped you because of this. And before they even said anything. And then if they wanted to go and talk, I'd be like, okay, I'm paid by the hour. I'll listen to you.
That's a great perspective.
I'm not in a hurry.
You're like, I'm not on my next call yet. You've got my time.
Yep. So, give them a chance to be heard. Ask them if there's something else going on. And, one of the things a lot of times, and this is, again, a technique that I would use, is I'd see a person, they're upset. And when I'd get that break, I'd ask them, I'd say, hey, listen, I know a traffic stop here is upsetting to you. Let me ask you a question. Is there something else going on in your world, your life right now, other than this traffic stop that's put you in this headspace? Question. And it, on the one hand, it causes them to stop and begin to think. And the other hand is there may on some level be some empathy going, okay, they're showing some concern about me and maybe what I'm going through, kind of things. And the other thing is that every police officer's been there. You've pulled over that car and everything is wrong. Registration, insurance, drugs, parole, you name it. And the officer knows where this is going to end up. This person's got a warrant. This person is going to get their car impounded, whatever. Whatever that situation is, the more empathy you show to that person, keeping the long-term goal in mind that you're going to get through it peaceably with that person either in custody or that car going to impound, goes better. And I believe I have worked through traffic stops with that approach that didn't end up in a wrestling match. Now, again, I always caveat that and say there are going to be people that you may not be able to de-escalate. So that is always that in the back of your mind. But again, I think the approach to, one, have empathy about that person, to listen to that person, and let that person know you're hearing what they're saying. And part of it is you may not get a point where you're going to agree, and it's going to be a standpoint of saying, you and I are at an impasse. We're not going to agree, and that's okay. But here's the thing: you have a recourse through the courts, and more times than not, if you go to court, it may work out for you. So you give them that glimmer that goes, okay, maybe there's a better way out or a different way out. And a lot of times that works out with a positive outcome.
Yeah, and I think in times when I've been pulled over for speeding, I've had so many encounters with law enforcement through losing Micah, and a high variety of them.
Yeah.
But you're thinking, oh crap, right? Like,
Right.
and how much is this ticket going to be? And is it going to affect my insurance? And, it takes you even a very simple, like that's kind of the lowest level of encounter you can have with law enforcement. And
Right.
I am very pro law enforcement. And it's still like this moment of like, oh my gosh, do I have my correct, registration in here? And is my insurance up to date? Like, and you're just
Right.
clicking through things. And I'm not expecting to have a racially charged encounter. I'm not
Yeah.
expecting to have a physical encounter. I'm usually a mom in a minivan with kids in the back seat, right? Like, I
Right.
hope that I'm an unthreatening figure when it comes to pulling someone
Right.
over,
Right.
but still, I would say that that's a stressful thing. And then I'm frustrated at myself for speeding and not paying attention. And now I got to do this thing and it'll be, and so I think for the officer, just remembering that, like, even in like the lowest level of encounter with the public, they're thinking, oh crap, like this wasn't what I wanted for my day kind of thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. And the other thing I really keep in mind with all the traffic stops that I've done is many times I'll pull that person over, and for you or I to get a ticket sucks. Oh man, I got to deal with the insurance. I got to deal with maybe go to court, whatever. For a person who is barely a paycheck away from homelessness
Mm-hmm.
or feeding themselves, getting that ticket may be the difference between losing their apartment and their job and
Yep.
everything else. And so their level of stress is through the roof.
Right.
And that's one of the things I think as an officer, you really try to have that personal discretion with. Hey, you've got A, B, and C wrong. Look, here's a small reminder. It's payable. You don't have to go to court, that kind of thing. And other times you get an insight and an opportunity to go, oh, wait, there's more going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, you need public assistance, more than you need tickets. And let's see what public assistance, what resources. I would always keep a copy in my car of just
Mm-hmm.
multiple city resources and charitable
Right.
resources, faith-based organizations that a person may not know about. And a lot of times people responded to that
Yeah.
saying, oh, wow, I didn't expect I would come
I
out
didn't
of here
expect you
with.
to help me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
again, if you use the opportunity, I mean, obviously, police do traffic stops in part to change driving behavior. Because gosh knows we lose too many people in
Mm.
crashes. And we also do it to find criminals because people that are out in the community committing crimes drive cars. And we know
Mm.
that. So there's that balance. But then there's that area that goes, this is an opportunity for you to interact with someone that you may be able to change things for the positive. So without a
Mm.
doubt, I was a young teenager getting pulled over, and I had an old gray haired cop pull me aside and kind of read me the riot act, talk to me big brother wise. And it kind of changed my approach to how I drove and what I
Mm.
drove and probably put me on a pretty decent path. So it can have an effect.
That's so good. And something that is earned, is learned, is ingrained over years of service and just wisdom that you develop and build. And we're at such a loss that we're missing that because it's so hard to get officers and keep them right now.
It is a national crisis. It's a
Mm-hmm.
crisis in our city. It's a crisis in our state. And as much as it is about the public and how they interact with police and the anti-police sentiment, it's also about the management and police
Mm.
departments, which right now is probably as challenging a leadership environment as you could be in. The public is demanding you hold officers accountable, which looks like every little thing an officer does that's outside of policy, you hammer them for. But I guarantee you, there's not a police officer working that every day they go to work, they haven't crossed a policy at some point in the day. There's so many of them and
Yeah.
in so many interactions. So it is very challenging. The one message I would put out to people in position of leadership is you don't get to be a good leader just by showing up every day.
Mm.
Leadership is a study. And if you're not studying leadership, if you're not going to leadership schoolings, classes, things like that, don't think just because you can write an evaluation that you're a good leader. If
Right.
you're not actively a part of your own leadership, then you are probably fooling yourself. My experience in the military was as I progressed through the ranks, every rank had its own school you had to go to.
Mm.
And the military has while it's not perfect, it has a culture of leadership education. There's
Mm-hmm.
professional reading lists, there's professional seminars, there's mandated schools you do as you progress through leaderships, which many times police departments don't have. And that's a real challenge. Kind of
Yeah.
experience I had over more than 20 years as a police officer were supervisors that you come away with and you go, yeah, not what I'm feeling from this supervisor is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the couple that I had that I felt were really, really positive were actually prior military people. And I could see some of the leadership that they were using and expressing was a reflection probably of the military service. So I'm a proponent of that. Other than that, I would say any police leader needs to take personal responsibility and personal initiative to go get leadership training. There's lots of leadership schools in lots of
Even
different areas.
podcasts, right? It doesn't have to, classes and training, and that's good, but just like start exposing yourself to those concepts.
I would say especially things that are not police related, meaning you're going to business leadership, you're going to nonprofit leadership, you're going to those kind of things. It makes a huge difference. Throughout my military career, not only did I do the military schools, I went to leadership seminars, read reading lists, read leadership material, and I feel it made a huge difference in my proficiency as a manager and a leader, no doubt.
Yeah, I can hear it. I agree. This is such a good conversation. Is it okay if we pause and then continue for a part 2?
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.
Friends, thank you for joining me on this part 1 with Chris Burns. And I'm so glad to have spent this time together. And I'm going to encourage you to tune back in for part 2 of the Hopecast with my guest, Chris Burns.
You've been listening to the Hopecast with Rachael Flick. To find out more, go to rachaelflick.com. While you're there, you can book Rachael for your next speaking engagement. Her inspiring message will be sure to engage and touch the heart of your audience at your next conference, church event, or business function. Go to rachaelflick.com to book her today. While you're online, you can discover more information about all of the platforms that this podcast is on. Also, be sure to click on the social media icons at the top of the page, and you will be directed to Rachael's social media sites. If you listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate if you would subscribe and leave us a review. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time for another edition of the Hopecast with Rachael Flick.